Welcome to Time Travel Comics, where we will take a brief blast to the past to explore some comic book history and artwork. This will be a short video to review a few books with a particular theme. And before I begin, I'd like to send a shout out and thank you to YouTuber Ranger Sly for mentioning a couple extra books after I completed the train theme video looking at streamlined locomotive, L-track cars, and trains on railroads. And he mentioned a couple great covers that I didn't know about, particularly Action Comics Weekly number 617 has a beautiful Dean Motter cover, and Action Comics Weekly number 641 with a Murphy Anderson cover showing Superman with his back against a train slowing it down before it at the edge of the track. So I want to thank Ranger Sly for showing me those couple of books and mentioning it in my comments section for the last video as we add to the theme that we just explored. And that's what I like to do. The last couple of videos that I did was on the Empire State Building theme and where it appeared in comic books. And just recently, trains and their appearance in comic books and the history of trains. So today we're going to venture out a little bit different theme, just to explore a comic book artist that I admire and enjoy, and that is Joe Sinnott. Joe Sinnott worked for 60 years as a Marvel freelancer, primarily as an inker, and introduced major titles that include Thor, the Black Panther, Galacticus, Silver Surfer, the Inhumans, and many more to follow during his long stint with Marvel Comics. What is particular about his work is that he embellishes or adds ink to the pages of the comic books. And he receives the work by the penciler to actually draw and render, after it's drawn and rendered, to add layers of ink on it that really makes it stand out and look very finished and complete. So we'll take a little tour. I'm going to activate my time machine on the right here, and we'll put a coin inside, a time token if you will, to take us back in time. And then maybe we can pick off some books from the carousels and the newsstand and see what we explore. I hear the time machine clicking and whirring. We'll just wait for our first comic book to appear. Oh, and there it is. This is an early work by Joe Sinnott, and this time he was not an inker. He was a penciler. The name is Jungle War Stories, number 6, and this appeared in March 1964, and it's a Dell comic cover with a 12-cent stamp there, and you can see it's a wartime story of a crash-downed American fighter pilot actually shot down by friendly fire. The interior of the work, there's 4 stories inside that were penciled by Joe Sinnott and actually inked by Vince Colletta. There was a very common inker at the time. This book depicts the war, particularly the Vietnam War, and Joe also served in the military. He served in Okinawa in World War II, driving a munition truck for the Navy. His brother unfortunately passed away in combat, and his mother warned him not to join the army, so he joined the Navy instead. And a lot of comic book themes post-World War II and during the Vietnam War depicted war stories, so you can take a look and see what Joe Sinnott actually penciled and Vince Colletta inked in terms of thinner line work, not too much shading that Joe is known for today, but just to start in his career. He actually began earlier in 1950 and did romance covers before joining Marvel and working freelance for almost 60 years. So that's our this is our earlier appearance of Joe Sinnott's artwork. The next book we'll be exploring involves Marvel and Fantastic Four. This is issue number 55, and this is where Joe Sinnott rose and began his claim to fame. You can see the distinct black lines in the background right here of the thing, the leg, showing the shadows, the line underneath the arm and the torso. So Joe Sinnott did a very good job of embellishing the artwork, making it stand out, adding block and contour to make the white part really rise to the front of the page. And Joe Sinnott's ink work was considered the very best, and he started with Jack Kirby in 1960, and after that all other pencilers were knocking on the door of Stanley's office to have Joe Sinnott ink their work, and some of them even threatened to leave Marvel if Joe didn't ink their covers and their interior artwork because he did such a fine job. So we'll take a look inside the book, and we can see his name credit on the bottom there, just as Stan Lee always does it, adding synonyms and adjectives: jovial, Joey Sinnott, Jack the King Kirby, really advertising the bullpen of Marvel at the time. And this is actually the fourth appearance of the Silver Surfer, and this book is considered to be one of the earliest appearances of the Silver Surfer in 1966. So this was in the comic book shelves back in 1966. You can see the detail on the houses and the buildings. And I always like looking at buildings. I think the architecture and the style and all those little windows, all those little lines were inked by Joe Sinnott. Some other inkers didn't catch all that detail, much to the chagrin of the penciler, and that's why they always wanted to work with Jack Kirby. You can also see here the detail here of the bricks flying and the movement. So it just makes for wonderful artwork that is complete and refined. Figure here looks a little bit like Sergeant Fury, as Jack Kirby rendered kind of with those sharp eyes and the eyebrows. You can mistake him for Sergeant Fury, but that was Jack Kirby's style. This book is pretty low grade, very worn. You see the creases and the chips, and this is what I call another low grade Leo Fine. I picked this up a while ago for under $10, but it's an iconic cover of the Fantastic Four number 55. Moving along to our next book. This is another Fantastic Four book. This is number 72. And number 72 was 1968, so we just saw from 1966. And by then, Silver Surfer was making a name for itself. You have other characters, include the Watcher. Galacticus makes an appearance later on. And this is just the fine apex of Joe Sinnott inking career, and he had many milestones, so it's not necessarily the last pinnacle work. And just opening up the pages, you can see how the line on the side here makes the two-dimensional form three-dimensional form, and this is what all pencilers wanted, is to get that three-dimensional form. And look at how Jack Kirby draws the building, and Joe Sinnott is right back behind him, drawing all the ink on the wall, creating the perspective. And look at the blur where the Silver Surfer just charges through with such force and such speed, all embellished by the ink. So it's just a great thing to see how the ink really works, and that was his specialty. Let's take a tour of how that works. So I'm going to move this book aside, and I have a reference book, and it was a compilation book that was from 1979. It's a huge book, Jack Kirby's Masterwork. And I picked this up at a local comic book store probably 10, 15 years ago now to date. But what I loved about this book is you can see the art before and after. So I'm going to bring the art closer to you so you can see the graphite and the rendering. And this is Jack Kirby's work right as it finishes production and waits for the ink. Jack Kirby did a lot of these bubbles to create mystery and power, and also cosmic unknown and mysticism. You'll see that in other books that he did too. And once it's inked, it really comes out. Look at the forearm, look at the chest wall, the eyes, the forehead, the planet in the background, the motion. This eventually gets sent over to Joe, and Joe Sinnott would add the black ink, making the orbs in the cosmic region here just really fill in. The shin bone, the surfer board with the detail. And he signed it right with Kirby. Kirby and Sinnott did a lot of work together. And again, working for a long time with Marvel. Joe Sinnott worked with John Buscema. He worked with titles on Thor, not just the Fantastic Four and the Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock, and many others. So you can see that before and after going on there. So wonderful way that the inker works. Another favorite of mine is another Fantastic Four, and this is number 95, and this was from 1969. A worn copy, a loved copy, not a gently used copy of Fantastic Four number 5, and there you see Joe Sinnott's name there and Jack Kirby. And there's one particular page, number 8, as I shuffle through to get there, that just really brings out the detail of Joe Sinnott's work. And that's right over here. It's a full-length page, and you have the Thing holding up a building after the bad guy sends a ripple blast. Monocle is the antagonist, but you can see how the Thing is holding up the building and all those windows. It was commented that Jack Kirby loved to draw a lot of bricks and windows, and Joe would ink all those doggone windows, as it was said once. You can see the fire escapes, the ladder. It's a particular subject I like. I like the urban landscape, but it's just the whole thing: the parapet, the facade, the masonry, and it just tells of all of what's happening. And there's more of that Jack Kirby-esque figure in the front that we've seen time and time again on covers and Panic and action scenes, with the creased eyes, the high eyebrows, and open mouth, and anatomy. Some argue that Jack Kirby was not formally trained in anatomy, but he was able to render it quite nicely. So this is Fantastic Four, number 95, and that is from 1969. Joe Sinnott was also known for working on Thor, not necessarily the Fantastic Four all the time, but Thor right here, including his brother Loki, was also inked by Joe Sinnott. As we open up, this is Thor issue number 191, and this is from 1971. John Buscema is credited with the cover here, and Joe with the embellishment. Then you can kind of see his name right there, and the shading work, the crouching, the light coming from the top, the dark coming from the bottom. It's exciting for me to see that. I like the contour and the contrast of that. And then again, as we saw in Fantastic Four, those orbs and bubbles that create a mysticism. It creates an action of something magical is going on with the line work and streams and flows. So that is Thor number 191. Another Fantastic Four cover, a little bit more in the Bronze Age, is Fantastic Four number 161. And we've seen Lizard before, swallowing up other comic characters like Wonder Woman, and this time it's Fantastic Four. So I could sense another theme coming on for time travel comics, where we could look at dinosaur and lizard covers. But that'll be for another time. But here you can see again, as we open the page, this is actually Rich Buckler. And I just like how when you open the page, you're greeted with the artwork right away. You can see here the contrast. The back leg, is behind the front leg. is Reed here is at the test of what he's going to do, facing projectiles. And this almost looks Jack Kirby-esque with the black ink and the solid ink here, the solid, very solid black here. It really creates that three-dimensional look to it that the artist had to do with pencil and paper. They didn't have CGI, they didn't have computers, they didn't have all of what they had was the pen, the ink, the pencil, and the color. And they did it with knowing their geography, knowing their theory, and studying what they did. So that's another great Sinnott, this time Rich Buckler, edited by Roy Thomas, who's a famed, acclaimed Marvel editor during the Bronze Age. So it's just nice to see all the work from Joe Sinnott introducing Thor in August of 1962 with Journey to Mystery number 83. Then he got his start with Marvel by doing Thor 91 to 2 and then 94 to 96. So after that introduction, a lot of pencilers and artists were looking to see what he can do, and he just solidified that three-dimensional look to his artwork. So in concluding, it's just so lovely to see the before with the pencils and the after. And we have to thank Joe Sinnott. He passed away last year in 2020, and he was a prolific artist, well loved. I'm going to include a couple links in the comment section below that's well done, that has a little bit of a biographical snippet, an interview with him, and you could just see how jovial and happy he was. He was full of life, and he loved what to do, and that was being the best inker that the comic world saw during the late Silver Age and Bronze Age. And thank you for watching this quicker video as we go.